Welcome back. You are watching Future Vision, the 2020 DTG Summit, coming to you live from London. We've had some fantastic speakers already today. And just a reminder to you that if you would like to comment on anything that you are hearing, or indeed pose a question to some of our speakers, you can do that by going to the chat function in the event platform. And you can pose questions which will then be asked to the panellists. Now, sport has long been at the heart of TV innovation, with major international sporting events acting as showcases for technological leaps such as colour TV, high definition and live streaming. Our next panel considers the latest trends, including remote production and streaming via social networks to deepen fan engagement. Here to set the scene and act as referee, although hopefully without VAR, is Carl Hibbert, Head of Consumer Media and Technology at Futuresource Consulting. Carl, over to you.
Well, thank you and good morning to everyone. I trust everyone is keeping well in these challenging times. So my name is Carl Hibbert. I head up Futuresource's consumer technology and media practice here in the UK. And I've got the pleasure today to talk about sports innovation. I think someone said last year that we'd all turn up to this event in 2021. Some of us dressed in shorts and t-shirts, and probably some of us still in our pajamas. I think we'd probably receive some very strange looks, hey, but here we are a year on, and I'm sure that is probably true. But we're making use of technologies and innovations, also to ensure that we've got the continuity of business in place, and also ensuring that we can all continue to attend and network through fantastic events, like we're all in here today. So I think today we're speaking on innovation, specifically on sports innovation as well. And I've really got that pleasure to discuss and debate this topic with some esteemed panelists, which I'll talk through and introduce in a few minutes. And I think this segment really has showcased, some of the many new tech innovations over the years. As was already mentioned, from colour TV broadcasts from the courts of Wimbledon, through to that development of high definition, key driver of monetisation in this sector. And then as we moved on to 2010, we can't really overlook, can we, the much hyped and debated 3D bubble, which is what sessions such as this were certainly talking about for 2 or 3 years non-stop. And then that's led the way and driven us to now the next era of 4K, which is very much doing the rounds on sports and now beyond sports as well. And now, even with 4K in place, we're now still already talking about and discussing the next tech innovations in quality, and that being 8K and the roadmap and migration strategy to it. And I think at each step, sports capture, has been really at the heart of this development, both in terms of innovation, but also critically, I think, for the industry as well, the monetisation of sports, and certainly very much at the heart of that strategy. And I think behind this consumer-facing innovation, sits a very, very tech-savvy, innovative production segment. It too has its continually adapt and developed, developing and creating those industry firsts, and with every leap really making big, significant step changes in delivery and making inroads into the industry. And I think perhaps really no more true than it is really all these innovations in tech in the present times, with the social distancing and lockdown headaches which have come with the COVID pandemic this year, it's really required, I suppose, a push for many broadcasters to take that leap into remote production, and also all the headaches and hurdles which go along with that as well. But more of that in a short while. But much of this innovation, I've talked about so far, is really centered around the quality of the image, and I suppose really, in part, this has been driven by the consumer electronics industry as they seek to really continue to develop and build new revenue from instilling replacement demand on TV sets, and also as well from content operators really seeking to drive and push up additional revenue streams and ARPU. I think now we're really in a society where quality of that image no longer satisfies the appetite of the consumer. Consumer demands now are very much more personalised. And when I talk about personalised, I'm talking about when they watch, how they watch, who they watch, and also where they watch. And now increasingly, I think we can now really start to replace the word watch with viewers now wanting to increasingly now engage, interact, react, and also socialize with that passive viewer linear feed becoming much more of a interactive experience and engaging experience for the consumer. And all this mishmash of technology, innovation, creativity, really is coming at a time where there really is quite significant disruption I suppose, really in the sports equilibrium, and it's now more prevalent than ever that we harness, manage, and optimize experiences and solutions for this. If we look at some of the key recent, I suppose, announcements and industry trends, we've seen the entry of tech giants, I suppose, notably Amazon here in the UK, bidding for those key football and other sports rights, and also as well winning those rights. You're challenging that traditional subscription model, which has really been at the heartland of pay TV for years. But also as well, I think when you look at the strategy of these new tech giants within this space, with Amazon right up there to be considered, perhaps maybe it's not necessarily the same business model and same end game for these tech giants, which are looking to venture into it. As it is Amazon more focused on actual retail drive from this product sector. So we'll discuss more about those topics in a minute. But I think one final point as well, and certainly topical for the debate today as well, is Premier League and other leagues around the world as well, considering their direct-to-consumer strategies, as a result of the lost income, as a result of closure of stadiums. And this really comes at a time where there's more of a higher degree of confidence than ever, with that D2C model. No longer is it that real Wild West and uncharted territory it was 3 or 4 years before. We've seen other genres of entertainment and other big production media companies really make a success of their direct-to-consumer proposition. And then when we cap all this off with looking at the consumer side and the habits of the younger generations now and how they're viewing content and services very much in a different way to all the generations. We've heard about that in the opening keynote this morning. There's reduced exposure to traditional advertising. Younger consumers very much at home with content consumption on a smartphone as much as they are with that on a TV screen. And they're being increasingly engaged now through just ever wider choice and variety of much shorter style of content. So when we put that all into the mix, it does present definitely a lot of challenges facing the sports industry moving forward. But so too, it must really attract so much interest and excitement and opportunity as well. New ways to monetize consumers, whether it be through micropayments, exclusive access, pay-per-view, new ways to engage and really open that two-way channel of communication with that fan base. And also, let's not forget the continued development of that core live feed, all adding to the overall improved experience for the viewer. So at this stage, I'd like to introduce my panelists for today. Normally I would just say to my left, but probably just the left and right screen on my panel here as well. Live from New York, we have Melissa Lawton, Head of Live Sports Production at Facebook. We have John Dolan, Senior Product and Engineering Manager at Arsenal FC, and also Gordon Roxburgh, Technical Manager at Sky Sports. So before we go into our debate and panel discussion, we've allowed enough time so we can hear from each of the panelists individually. So they themselves, we can hear from them sharing some of that insight around their roles and experiences. So with that in mind, it gives me great pleasure to introduce my first panelist, Melissa from Facebook.
Hello, thank you. Yes, I work for Facebook. I'm the head of production for our funded content. I also take the learnings and experiences that we have with that funded content and scale that out to all our other partners so that everyone benefits from the learnings that we get, and also work to ensure that we are at the head of innovation in the industry for production and for sports production in particular. And while COVID has really shut down a lot of things, I've also been switching my attention to Oculus and working in that space to build a sports pipeline. I thought I'd just present on a little bit about Facebook and what we're doing in sports. Not everyone is on the same playing field when we talk about knowledge of Facebook. So I just wanted to go through and just step through the innovations that we've been working on in the past year, and also what Facebook is and how you publish to live to Facebook. So first of all, Facebook has continued to invest in live. It's a really important topic for us, and as part of that investment, we're really focused on allowing partners to go live in many different formats and create a scenario on Facebook that works for their audiences and their publishing needs. So live on mobile is the first, and it's the easiest one. It's the one most people think about when you think Instagram and Facebook. It's hitting people with relevancy and recency in the moment, capturing content that probably couldn't be captured if you had to send 3 cameras and a full broadcast there. We notice fans really love behind the scenes, and going live with your mobile phone is the easiest way to capture some of those amazing behind the scenes moments. We have Facebook Live API, where you can send your professional broadcast to Facebook using the API. You can use third-party APIs to do that. And that's what a lot of premium sports broadcasters are using to get to Facebook. Live in groups is a new one. It's an acknowledgement that sometimes fans just really want to talk to other fans. They don't want to be part of your page. They want to engage with other people who are interested in the same things as them. And by going live in a fan group, you can really target sponsors with new content going to very specific cohort of people. You can have a new one that's just been released is paid online events. So if you were someone who was making money by having an audience live at your venue, and that audience can no longer go to your venue, you can stream your live event to Facebook and people can subscribe to that event. It's a pay-per-view type experience. Another one is live from Messenger rooms. It's our Zoom type experience where you go on to Messenger, you can have up to 50 people, and we're now seeing NASCAR and WWE create broadcasts with at zero cost involved to their fans, and they're putting those live rooms on their page. And then obviously live in Oculus. And I did leave one thing off the slide here. It's live to Oculus or live to Portal, two of our recent hardware releases. You can go live in 180 or 2D in Oculus, and you have the option to go with your own app in App Store or use the free to everyone venues app. What's important to us is interactive production. We are seeing this is what.
Yeah,
because they lost to Barcelona.
You know why? They missed 3 unbelievable chances.
They did. And they're now in 5th place. And that 5th spot.
So it's hard for me to talk over that sound, but basically we have a tool that pops up with a slide that says, do you want to ask questions to the hosts? The fans then type in their questions to anyone who is sitting back in the La Liga studios, and Joe Morrison or any of the other pundits can answer directly a fan's question in real time. We've done this because we saw so many fans asking questions in the chat section of a live production, and it was getting lost and very hard for producers to actually target what fans wanted to know. This is really the USP of our La Liga content, where fans can now very much drive the interaction with the hosts and drive the nature or direction of the show. That question goes into a back-end tool, so it's not seen by the general public. It's only seen by the producers and the hosts who have access to that back-end tool. What we've seen in La Liga is that we're getting younger viewers, much younger viewers, 82% under the age of 35. We get 21% of the viewers voting on a poll, and that's quite an old statistic actually. We've come a long way since then, and we're ready to release soon new statistics on that topic and showing much higher interaction. And of course, people who vote watch longer. So that's that engagement, and that's getting past that 3-second viewer to the 1-minute viewer to the 10-minute viewer to the 30-minute viewer. So we know that fans really want to participate in this way, and so we have built into Facebook Live these production tools. Using Live Producer is really an important one for us. It's part of the Live API process. You can connect using RTMPS, hardware or software encoders. You can schedule your broadcast now, so you can let fans know when something's coming. You can trim the video that you produce so that you don't have the 10-minute countdown or whatever as you prepare to go live. You can rehearse and test your live broadcast workflow in a private mode, so you can really get everyone working in the right direction. And you can monitor stream health. A lot of people didn't know why their Facebook live broadcast was dropping out. So now you can see in real time what the problems that could bring your stream down. And then just making sure that sorry, go back. We use Live Producer also to create more content on the go. This was really important, and lots of feedback from our publishers that they wanted to create real-time clips from the last 60 seconds of their production without having to go to another tool to do that, or once they've finished their live, to create more content and send out, calls to action using like, did you miss this? Go and watch the live. All that sort of clipping you can now do using our Live Creator Studio tool. You can use the native tools that I just mentioned, live polling and live questions. You can use the donate feature. You can use the live URL so that you can promote your own website or convert people to where you want to go, and manage and pin comments. And again, comments are still the most important part of this social viewing. People do use them, and the more capable you are with managing comments with your broadcast and pinning the right comments, the better engagement you get in the long run. I'm having a little delay here. Yeah, if we look at what we're doing with Champions League, we just had the Champions League final. We had more than 13.7, I believe, million viewers watching that for more than a minute. We had 7.2 million peak concurrent viewers. It was a massive, massive event for us. And it was a culmination of sort of 2 years' work where we were tweaking and changing and making sure that we had redundancy on the stream. We built something called the Facebook Video Hub, where you can bring the signals in the broadcast workflow. It's monitored within that Video Hub section and then delivered through Facebook's to all the countries who had the rights for that. It was a fully interactive production using all of Facebook's best practices that we've learned over these years. They did it with remote production during lockdown. We can talk about that more later. And it did set new heights and new standards for Facebook Live. Thank you, Carl. Carl, you might be on mute, I believe.
Sorry, that is the classic phrase of lockdown. Yes, so many thanks for those words, Melissa, and we'll dip into some of those topics a bit later on in the discussion. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Gordon Roxburgh of Sky, who can talk us through some of his recent actions and strategies relating to remote production.
Hello there. I think I've been at Sky 20 years. And I think the last 6 months have probably been the most challenging 6 months that we've probably faced. I can count on hands and toes the amount of major news events, the amount of events we've worked on that have been hard to do over the years. But the last 6 months has probably pushed every piece of ingenuity that we've had to the limits. I think there's 3 phases that we've worked on that I'll mention briefly. Then we'll talk mainly about the last phase of how we return sport on air. So I think the first thing we really were focused on doing is how we kept our channels on air, how we kept our people safe, how we kept Sky News on air, how we kept Sky Sports News on air. So Sky Sports News is an operation with a full newsroom, a full control room. We reduced that down using technology to having 3 or 4 people working on site and a presenter, everyone else working from home. The next stage of that was, how do we start producing content? we've got some great content, we've got some great talent signed up on Sky Sports. How do we get them to our customers on our channels that we've made the decision to keep back on air? So we worked very hard on something called the Sky Virtual Production Suite, which essentially was technology in the cloud that allowed our production teams to work from home, producing content, original content for our customers. And I think one of those things that people remember that we started to do was watch-alongs, where we bring up these great sporting moments, Ashes Test match days, the cricket, the Ryder Cups, and have those people who were part of that engaging with our talent to explain what was happening in that moment. And that was some unique content that we probably had never thought of doing and would never need to use again, but just captured a moment of people sitting at home on a Sunday afternoon during proper lockdown, having Roy McIlroy taking you through what was happening in his brain at a Ryder Cup. It was quite fantastic. The third phase then, which we're going to talk about a little bit now, was how we started to think about Project Restart, as the football clubs and the Premier League and the broadcasters called it. How did we start returning sport live on the screens and at scale? Normally we work with a weekend, and then maybe there's some European games or some midweek football league. This year was going to be how are we literally going to be doing, and we'll come on to the number later, 100 games in 40 days. I mean, that was an unprecedented number of games that we were going to have to produce for our customers. So what did we do? Once we understood the season was going to be restarting, we essentially had a 3-week intensive build period at Sky, working with all our partners in the industry to take this 100-game challenge as it was and make it reality. So with my colleagues in Sky Sports, Sky Production Services, which is our operations department within Sky, our content technology and innovation team, who do the build out and manage our facilities for us. NEP, both in terms of NEP UK, who are our outside broadcast partner for the majority of our football, and NEP Connect, who are our service provision for delivery of services, and plus BT Media and Broadcast, who are our contracted delivery partner for Premier League content. So we all had to bring that whole team together to collaborate on temporary solutions within the Osterley campus and up at Media City in Manchester to cover the Premier League and Football League at significant scale with rapid turnarounds. And rapid turnarounds is again a challenge we don't really do, as in a game finishing at 10 p.m, 10:30, and then that outside broadcast truck having to be de-rigged, get on the road to then do the same thing the next day. So as an industry, we came together to start thinking about decisions that we would make that would keep the coverage at the level that was expected, but allowed that scale to run. So as an example, how many cameras would we run with? Quite often a really big game, we could be pushing 25, 30 cameras on a Manchester United Liverpool game. What we fundamentally had to say is, well, actually, if that truck was unplugging at 10 o'clock the next day, there's no time to take those cameras out that stadium. So what you end up doing is saying, well, look, we've got 13 cameras there and 13 cameras there, move the core part of the technology and then start hopping around the country. And then understand how social distancing was impacting, how would that impact the customer experience. So the slide before, we showed our presenter, Kelly Cates, with the talent, the pundits there. We have to social distance them. How does that work on camera? How does the interaction of those people work? How did they do the analysis that our customers are so used to? So we had to reinvent that whole way of working as well. I think one of our other key things was people first. Really, really important, just to value our staff and say, your safety is the most important thing here. Are you comfortable working in this position? And then working in conjunction with BBC, BT and Amazon, we all came to very similar working models, very similar ways of working. And as we said, we covered 100 matches in 40 days through Football League playoff semi-finals at clubs in the middle of nowhere, Premier Leagues, Football Leagues, and then playoff finals at Wembley. It really was a true collaborative effort from a lot of people to get that off. And a couple of pictures there, just a couple of very small mini case studies of things that we did. So we have a remote production facility at Sky that was doing our Football League. We converted that to do Premier League at a scale. Now, normally when we do these things, we just put more and more people into OB trucks, more and more people into spaces. That wasn't something we could do. So we made a very early decision to, as I would call it, Shawshank the people out of the small room, and we made the studio floor, or one of our big studio floors, into a technical space. We actually built in that technical space a socially distanced operational area for our replay team for Premier League football. We built an extra control room for a match director to sit in with a vision mix on a monitor stack. With these vision mixers sitting behind them, we did things that we'd never thought we needed to ever do, but to keep the people safe and keep them zoned, so that replay team never needed to then go into the control room where maybe the director or the producer were. We also made a very early decision to take over a training facility in one of our Sky training units, and we essentially built out graphics rooms for our graphics teams to operate for all our sports in that area, and that allowed us to keep our graphics team completely zoned together, and they could move between productions but not move between different technology units. And you can see from the picture there, the four graphics people, the graphics operators, the stats people, the statisticians that make up a Premier League graphics operation, sitting in desks, socially distanced from each other in a training room, and that whole facility has been a fantastic success. Probably more as well because they've got a window to look out of rather than being in a dark, dingy control room or truck that people are used to working in throughout their lives. And then there's different ways of doing it. That new normal, there's no one-stop shop for doing this new normal. So Premier League, we had built a match gallery and a replay center to generate the world feed. The world feed's a really important thing for the Premier League. It's watched by more people outside the UK than is inside the UK. So actually producing that to the same level was really important for us. We then had our presentation gallery here at Sky. And then we used Media City. Working with NEP and NEP Connect, we built a facility at Media City that allowed the games that weren't being produced fully remotely to take the people away from the truck. Again, we were very early still in lockdown, and we've got people, we don't want people to travel. We didn't want people who stayed maybe in, for example, Leeds to have to then travel to Bournemouth to do replay on a Premier League game. What we were able to do is say, guys, go to Media City. We built rooms at Media City, 2 rooms that supported replay on 2 of our 6 outside broadcast trucks that allowed the team to be safe and not have to travel the country. And that also meant we were just not having people on site. So when everyone's social distancing on site, all of a sudden you've got no replay team on site. You've got the camera people only. You've got maybe a director, a sound person. You've just reduced the number down on site to keep it safe. Football League, we did the same. We had the match gallery and we had Media City. And then Scottish football was another one that we did. We took our learnings a little bit from how we do F1, and we said, well, the production team, the way Scottish football currently works, is essentially a London-based team. Our graphics teams, our support teams, are some of our producers. We need to keep them in down here. We don't really want to be flying them and putting them up in hotels because that just isn't the thing to do. In fact, at the beginning of this process, we couldn't book our people into hotels. The hotels weren't open for anybody else unless you this, NHS pass. So again, a way of working to say, well, the Scottish team who make the football game, you make the game, we'll bring all the presentation cameras back, very much like we do in F1, and we'll hub the whole operation through a control room at Sky. And then with some shared facilities. So one of the successes, if you follow some of the other publications, has been Sky Crowds. Worked very hard with teams to come up with a system that is Sky Crowds, so the fake audio, as we say. and how that interacts and how we generate that. It's not just somebody playing as what we'd call in the industry cart effects, playing up a little bubble of fans cheering. It's interactive. The people who are doing it know the game. So we've got a team here at Sky in a facility doing that. And then we touched briefly before on a graphics hub that just becomes a space for everyone to work in. So that's the key journey from Sky, from oh dear, we're locked down, to let's start making content, to then start making content at scale.
Perfect. Lovely. Thanks for those words, Gordon. Much appreciated. And finally, just before we dip into our discussion, John Dolan from Arsenal. I'd like to hear a few words from you, if that's okay.
Sure. Thanks for inviting me to the panel. So my name's John Dolan. I work for Arsenal Football Club. I've been here for about 6 years, and then before that, I was at Sky for 14 years. So I work within what they call the digital experience group, that breaks into sort of 3 areas: sort of fan membership, insight and analytics, and then product and engineering, which is the area which I manage. And again, that sort of breaks into a number of different areas. So I sort of look after the product roadmaps for Arsenal.com and the official Arsenal app. So that's kind of our own platforms. I look after our CRM platform. And then the bit that's probably been the most challenging, especially with COVID, is managing our media facilities. That's everything from TV studios, galleries, edit suites, storage, MAMs, distributing our content over satellite and IP, and also live production. The one thing we don't do is we don't do content. So we're not fluffies. So we don't write any stories, and we don't produce any sort of videos. I guess the lockdown's been really interesting for us. It was almost like a slow motion car crash. We saw it happening. So we're able to get a little bit of a house in order before it hit. And we certainly have been back in the office since February, which is just amazing to think about that. But in that time, we've had to build, we used to do a live TV production, which required people to be within the TV and gallery. Well, that wasn't going to happen. So we've had to build a virtual vision mixer in the cloud and deliver new workflows around that. Allows us to deliver to Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, etc. We've had to take live feeds in, which would be traditionally sort of baseband video. So these would be the cables that you sort of plug into your media facilities. And we've had to turn those all to IP and distribute those around. We've had to come up with new remote editing solutions because our editors haven't been on site. So we've got parts of our facility that were never meant to be publicly exposed to be working over the public internet. And now we've had to turn those into a solution that allows our editors to be able to do so. And then we've had to provide other sort of clientless and client-based VPN to enable some access into that office, with the challenging being that we have quite a lot of freelancers coming in, and it was okay if someone was sitting over their shoulder, but now, they're out of sight, out of mind. So we've really got to be careful around sort of security of what happens on those front. And then the other bit that's probably been challenged for us is very much like Sky. We also do live productions. And although we don't play it back out live, we have facility to do so because we don't have the rights. We still produce it live. So yeah, we have a thing called the International Program Block, which is essentially our match day commentary and graphics across the match. We have a 30-minute magazine show with 30-minute sort of match of the day type analysis, plus our press conferences that we've got to deliver to all our takers. And in fact, I guess the bit we've kind of been victims of our own success, in that we've been able to build these facilities, and now there's an expectation from the people that are using our services that we can just do this day in and day out. And unfortunately, what they don't see is the hard work that goes behind the scenes. So although it looks like our output that we're delivering is the same as what we had sort of pre-COVID, it's not quite the case. And we have a number of individuals that are working longer hours and a longer week. And I think burnout is the real thing we've got here. It's very hard to bring freelancers in now to be able to train them up to be able to do what these guys are doing. So I'll leave that there, and then we can go into the sort of panel discussion.
Perfect, lovely. Thank you very much for that, John. Much appreciated for that insight into Arsenal. So I'd like now to open it up to the discussion, and I think just as an opening question, and I thought we can probably actually tailor the approach to each of you here as well. But we saw at the start of this year as well, no live sports as well. And be interesting just to get your take from different parts of, I suppose, the supply chain, is how you've supported, I suppose, from your perspective, Melissa, but from Gordon, John, your perspective, how you've manage this period of the year with no sports? What have you sought out to maintain that engagement, and fan base, but also importantly as well, the monetization of those consumers? And I suppose, really as a follow-up question, and maybe build this into a response, it's just, any of these learnings, adaptations, are they likely to embed down and remain now part of your longer term strategy? Melissa, maybe I'll come to you first, if that's okay. Your take on things, how you've supported this or the sport drought, shall we call it? I think you're on mute, Melissa.
Yes, I am. No, I'm not. So yeah, it's been a tough, it's been hard for all of us, and it was the pivots that we all had to do. So as rights holders in certain territories, we lost some very, very premium content that was bringing people back to Facebook, every single weekend or multiple times in the week for those pages. On the other hand, we saw an uptick of people wanting to consume more video on Facebook as well. So there were two, I guess, key things that we thought about. First of all, how do we satisfy the fans who are missing their content that they expected to see? And Gordon mentioned it before, watch parties with archive content, premiering old videos, and allowing people to tune in. We saw amazing content coming from, people like Cricket Australia running the entire hours of a test match, and then people joining in or bringing it to Facebook with brand new commentary using third-party tools like Kissway, where you had a completely synced commentary to the video. We immediately sent out best practices and scaled solutions. There's, getting your fans to create the content as well. User generated content that, send fans out a challenge and then package that up into new content. We saw Ironman swing from away from live races on site to live races remotely from home. So they used online training tools like Ruby to basically replicate the ride part of their race, and then again we had third-party tools bringing in all those things together so that it really looked like the Tour de France or an Ironman race that was happening in front of your eyes, but each rider was at home. All of those were using remote production or cloud-based tools. Then we also, as a company, people went straight into the mode of how do we support partners so that they don't, it's not costing them to publish, that they can, faith-based groups especially, they needed to turn things like their church services online, in an instant from one weekend to the next. So supporting those through our global hub was very, very important, ensuring that our live producer tool was stable, putting a lot of attention and focus on building tools like paid online events so you could start making money, sponsorship tools, all these things that, that there's two focuses. One for me was how do we replace the content that we lost, and how do we teach people how to continually funnel content so that they keep their pages alive and fans happy because they are coming to social media platforms to consume content, and how do we build better tools? So they were the three approaches that we took. And it was hard work, and it pivots and swivels are going to keep happening as we move forward, and I think we'll keep developing in those three ways.
Great, thanks, Melissa. John, from your perspective, we're like managing the team, the players, I suppose, through that. It'd be interesting to get your insights on this.
Yeah, I mean, I think probably initially it was archive, because that's really all we had to get out of, and thank God we did have an archive. So yeah, we also did things like watch along. So we got some classic matches where we'd won some silverware, and then we would get one of the legends to come on and basically just talk about his experiences of how it felt on the day leading up to the game and through the game, and any kind of special moments of which changed it. And so we sort of streamed those out live, which was we've not really done that before, but it was it's one thing we can be thankful of COVID. It allowed us to try that kind of type of content. And then also we've been looking at one of the things that we just got an award for actually was when we did our we have a kind of raise money for charity for Arsenal Foundation. It's normally a kind of table-based event that you come to the stadium with, and obviously that wasn't going to be possible. So we tried to do a kind of live production of inviting a number of guests in, hosted by Matt Lucas, which had its own sort of challenges of trying to bring in 20, 30 guests through a kind of door and out the other side. So archive initially, and then I guess going into that is then when we started getting access to the players, which was mainly just talking heads, is just trying to teach people about how to set up their cameras at home, because people don't have to worry about that, because normally you have a whole crew on the ground that would deal with all this. So, we were having to write little sort of one-pagers to hand out to people to say, okay, well, for example, Carl, don't sit in front of a window because you end up, so sit with the window facing you. And then the bit that sort of went on to more challenging was when we started having talent working from home and they're doing commentary. So, from barking dogs and getting them to put their dogs out the back garden to, please try and keep your kids not to be streaming Netflix because you've got limited bandwidth in your household and we need everything we can to make sure that we're getting a guaranteed connection.
Great, thanks, John. And just maybe flipping that question slightly on its head, Gordon, just off the back of your presentation there, you mentioned that new normal there, throughout the pandemic this year as well, is, your learnings, I suppose, having the ability to maybe reassess, maybe, current workflows, when there was no sport and live production. But what would you say has been maybe the biggest innovation, maybe creative way now you're considering doing things on the production side, which have come out of this?
I think the biggest thing is how we engage with talent, with pundits, with stars in their own environment. I think that's the biggest thing. How we bring people into our programs that are now back on air. So it's NFL. We've got a great talent pool we use for the NFL on Sky Sports on our NFL channel. How do we get them? So using that same technology, but bringing it into the building, I think that's one of the things that we would have never have done before. You very traditionally have gone, we'll send somebody a satellite truck, but now we're very much going, we'll use the technology we used during the lockdown process to get those people on air. I think very briefly outside the sports thing, you've seen that on Britain's Got Talent, this big video wall of just the fans watching the show. That's technology that we've all been working with during the lockdown, and we're now seeing that in the mainstream.
Right, that's really interesting. Thanks for that, Gordon. And I suppose I've got time for one more question. Actually, maybe just like to probe on. We talked about sports innovation. That's the topic here as well. And as I highlighted, sports innovating, whether it be color, HD, 4K, 3D, 8K, etc. as well. But where do you see the next wave coming from? Is it, as I pointed out, that in that opening there as well, is the next stage of just quality of image enough? Or and what is it really the consumer wants? In that next wave as well. I imagine we can probably do another 2 hours discussing that. Topic's quite big, but if maybe we can just keep to maybe just a minute max, just because I'd like to open up to Q&A in a minute. But maybe we'll go around. Maybe back to maybe you, John, first. Where is that next kicker for innovation?
Well, on a personal note, it's just death by choice. We have so many different formats and so much content coming from different channels. It's then what do you watch and the kind of discussions you have. So that kind of recommendation or artificial intelligence trying to find out what content we do go to.
Great. Gordon?
I think people will always come together for that moment shared on the screen in their house. So we'll always be focused on making that better. But what you've then got is, as John alluded to, it's choice. People want the choice of how they watch, when they watch. And that's going to be, I think, our biggest piece. Is we'll always have that central focus. When England are playing in the World Cup final, ever, Scottishman saying that, the country will come together, and that's always going to be that point. But you say in the build-up games, people who love the football are going to want to watch that on a second screen. They're wanting just to tune in. Sky launched Sky Sports Recap, which is a system driven now that if you've missed the goals, you can tune in. Great at the weekend, wasn't it? We'd two massive goals. You've tuned in, and you're going, Liverpool have gone like 5-2 down here or whatever it was in the end. You go, but very quickly you can watch that goals, and then you're now going to engage with the rest of the match on the big screen. I think that's going to be the unlocks we're going to have.
Yeah. And finally, Melissa, how would you like to add to that?
So we also think it's the personalization of content. I want what I want when I want it, and it seems to be going further and further in that direction to really deliver. I want to see highlights in real time. I want to see highlights afterwards. I want to see the live content, but I want to shift the time when I start that personalization of sort of also targeted ads or sponsorship and groups, and that seems like with the multiple formats of viewing, just continually feeding into that idea that people want to see when they want to see, how they want to see it. And then I'm going to just throw the big bomb out there and just say, like, I think Oculus has, with Quest, the perfect market fit at the moment. We have an untethered experience where you can watch in a social way, and Quest 2, you can watch, in fact, the current Quest, you can watch Fox boxing in a venue with your friends in real time. I sat with my husband on one couch and I on the other on the weekend, and we both were able to watch as avatars and then connect with a ton of other people in the venue, and then go to a virtual, have a virtual beer afterwards. It was that I think is somewhat in the future. It's a long way still in the future, but I think we're walking down that path, and it will be something that we all have to consider more.
Perfect, great. And then just one final bit, and just maybe it is just a 10-second a snippet from each of you relating to that question as well. Is that is there one company positioned to do all this? In the case of Sky, you see this as your job to deliver this personalised across every platform, every service, or are we seeing now where the likes of Facebook now are increasingly now not necessarily a competitor in this space, but a synergetic experience to extend the life cycle of content and the experience for that consumer? Gordon, I think you're on mute. Yeah.
Sorry, we had to get that one in, didn't we? I work on the content creation side of the business, but we work with all the parties to get that content out to our customers, no matter if they're a subscriber or just someone we're reaching out to take the Sky Sports brand to.
Great, thanks. Yeah. Great. Any more? Sure. Are you happy to go to questions? Anything to add? No. Great. Well, in that case, now we've got a few questions from the audience. So we've got comments. So one question, I don't know who this has come from, but comments and fan interaction is coming to the fore now more than ever, both from Facebook, but also with Sky, with their fan zones, with the artificial noise, now pumped into the event. Do you consider this sustainable in the long run as a replacement for being there? And what more can be offered, given existing technologies and capabilities? Maybe Gordon, I think maybe if you're on the thick of that, maybe if you want to kick off.
I think there's lots of things around the world that people are doing of how they bring fans into our stadiums. I think our massive football stadiums, I think that's difficult. And we've seen things around the world where people put virtual audiences in, or they've done virtual video walls where they've brought the fans in. Again, go back to what Ant and Dick are doing on UK television, and it does bring that in. But how do you do that at scale? I think, and to generate that atmosphere that the players then thrive off. I think that. Where's the line between fake and reality? I think that's quite hard to do, maybe.
Interesting, yeah. John, from your perspective. I think you're on mute, John.
Yeah, Facebook is a distribution channel, but it's not the distribution channel. We also deliver out to Instagram, which they own, but Twitter and Twitch, etc. And I guess where you're looking at that interaction, we probably need someone to sit across each one of those channels. So for us, it's really a resource perspective in that having people on those channels to be able to manage that level of interaction and feedback. And then the slight complication around all of this, especially for us, is just the rights and what's allowed on each channel at what times gets very complex. So yeah, it's just working around all those kind of challenges.
Great. And Melissa, we're just a bit short on time, but if you maybe just have a couple of quick snippets to add to that finally.
Well, like there was a great stat yesterday at Leaders in Sport that like only 1% of NBA fans have ever been to a game. So there has to be a solution for the other 99%, and it's got to be delivered in a way that they want to see it. So whether it's crowd noise, that's one thing, and that's one thing that probably could be dropped once fans get back in the stadium. But you need to think about the 99% who can't get to the stadium, can't afford tickets.
Great, thanks, Melissa. Well, I'd love to carry on this conversation more, but I'm afraid we're out of time now. So first of all, I'd like to very much thank all my panelists for contributing today. Very much appreciate your input into this. And thanks to everyone who's been listening today as well. Thanks for listening. Hope you've enjoyed this session and enjoy the rest of the day as well. So on that note, I'd now like to hand back to Andrea. Thank you, everyone.
Carl, thank you very much indeed. Some fascinating insights there, and I particularly enjoyed the Arsenal's Zoom tips. We've reached the halfway point, but please don't go away. Our next session follows in just a few minutes with 4 brilliant innovators who are helping to transform our industry. That is in Innovation Showcase, coming up next.